Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim Baldini. This is Joe Labiera, the guy over there. There we go.
I'm Joe from Stillwater. This is Jim from Sandyston. And what we're doing is a legislative district analysis for all 40 legislative districts in New Jersey. Today, we're doing legislative district number 11, and it's in Monmouth County, which is a Jersey Shore county. And part of our analysis consists of all the registered votes, all the registered voters, the votes that were cast, and then the differences between the assemblyman and the senator and the Senate race in each legislative district. The analysis we do is pretty detailed. It's deep dive, and we also look at the money amount that each party spent to get each one elected.
Right, and so this is the comparison of the 2021 map to the 2023 map, and what we will be having because of the census in 2020. All that changed, the districts changed, and we have two. We have in this district, we actually have a former in the 2021 race. It was all Democrats who were incumbents. Now with the 2021 election, we picked up two Republican two assembly seats, and the Democrats retained the Senate seat. So we have a split district now where the Republicans have two assembly women who hold that and are going to be the incumbents in the 2023 election. And we have one Democrat in the Senate who is going to be the incumbent in this district. So it's going to be a real interesting race in this coming up. What we're going to see, because it's a new map and it's slightly different, and it doesn't favor the Republicans. So, would you like me to walk through that, Joe?
Yeah, let's walk through the map.
So this is the new map. You can see, and the I think I mentioned this before, but they don't give you the list of the towns, so you have to go into a deep dive and trying to figure out which towns are there and which towns aren't there. So you become very familiar with the map. In this case, the West Long Branch borough, which was in the 11th district, is now in the 13th district, which is in green, and added to the new 11th district is Bradley Beach, which is way down here by Neptune City Borough. And it's right next to it, next Neptune Township and Neptune City. They're right next to it. So that's a increase for the Democrats. The Democrats gained 200 registered voters in that town, and the Republicans lost in that town from West Long Branch. They lost about, actually, and now that I look at the numbers, it's almost 700 votes the Republicans lost in that district with this redistricting. So it is going to be an extremely tough race coming up. Just on the numbers, and we can look at that if you want. We can put that up here on the map. You can see Bradley Beach, Republican, vote wise. Bradley Beach is right here, 1,142. Democrats, 763 are the Republicans. And if you look over on the, we're on the, if you look on the other side,
the audience should expand their screen at this point. You should hit that little box in the right-hand corner and expand your screen, because we're working on Google Sheets here, so the numbers might be a little small, but we have charts. We have pretty colored charts to show.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So the numbers are dramatically different from what they were, and you're going to see that when you break down the numbers. All right, Joe. So let's go into. You want to start with our charts?
Yeah, let's start with the regular election charts. The chart we did that shows the total registered votes and then the breakdown between Assembly and Senate. So that's, I guess we always start from big to small for orientation. So let's just go with the last election. Here's the Senate.
Here's the Senate. Yep, and you can see the
tight race.
It's a very tight race. We have Vin Gopal, who is the Democrat, had 36,978 votes, right? And the Republican had 34,296 votes in this map. So, that is the loss for Lori Annetta, who was the Republican, was wasn't too. It was close.
Yeah, we're
The
about to show the margin in a second, but if you look at just the colors, the pictures, the colors, the numbers that correlate to the colors tell an interesting story. It's neck and neck all around, and then in some areas like Asbury Park City or Long Branch or yeah, pretty much those two, and then maybe Neptune, you have a predominance of Democrat voters, and then they slowly eat away at the other townships. So that it's like they establish a foothold in one area. And where
right,
further analysis needs to be done is the actual demographics of that area to determine, is there a particular demographic that these Democrat votes are actually coming from? And then also, you're going to see when we start briefing the money spent, how the Democrats use money to sway the election and how they outspend Republicans dramatically. But what's going to surprise you is when you see how little the Republicans spend, but yet how well they do considering. So neck and neck all around, a few Democrat strongholds, and they barely win an election that they overspend the Republicans dramatically on.
yeah. So let's we can pull. I'll pull this back
Mm-hmm.
and we'll put the map back or put the graph back up. You can see down. Well, I mean, maybe you can't see. Let me make that bigger so we'll won't hurt your eyes. Down here at the bottom is the total difference between this is Democrat Van Gopel, this
Mm-hmm.
is the Republican Lori
Mm-hmm.
Annetta, and the difference between those is 2,682 votes.
Wow. Wow. It's less than
Yes.
1%.
Yeah, that's a big. It's um, a big loss. She could have. I mean, this is and you can see the cost on what
Yeah.
they spent
Yeah. Put your
right
cursor on
below
that.
it.
This is incredible. Incredible. For
Let
less
me
than
make this.
1% victory, the Democrats spent almost $1 million to the Republicans $13,000. And if you look at the cost per vote, the Democrats spent over $51 per vote versus the Republicans spending, what was that, like a buck 30 or something like that, a buck
Yeah,
47, a buck, and they still, so the Republicans spent $1.47 per vote. The Democrats spent 50 times what the Republicans
yeah,
did, and
and
yet the Democrats win by less than 1%. Why aren't the Republicans winning this election?
Joe, just to give everyone, we're going to do this live on screen. $3,932. Again, we've said this before. This is no great predictor, but if you were just to factor in what was spent and how it was spent, and we're assuming that all these things are equal, and
Mhm.
if you do get if it is per vote, you're looking at just $4,000 as a number that would have changed the outcome of this election.
And Jim,
Four
this is the
thousand
same
dollars.
pattern of the other three districts we've done already. This is the
I
same pattern.
I agree. I agree.
I mean, we're only into this slightly with the three districts, but I mean, holy cow, we're seeing this pattern throughout. I mean, if this becomes the pattern for all 40 districts, I mean, this
And to
doesn't
be
require
clear,
a brain surgeon to analyze this.
well, I'm going to say this because I have looked into the other ones. In all of the Republican insurgent districts, in other words, where we are behind,
Mm-hmm.
this is what you're seeing. Seems to be the pattern
Mm-hmm.
where was what you're seeing, where the Republicans are outnumbered money wise, but are doing phenomenal on election day and really raking in the votes. That seems to be the norm for that. And for those who are incumbents, it's a different story in many of the cases, as you'll see. And so this is a key component of whatever strategy you're looking into when you're talking. In the case of donors, money, money, money will win this race. And let's just say if let's do crazy talk for a minute, Joe. Let's do crazy talk. Let's not say 4,000. Let's double Anetta's amount to 50,000. Let's just say it goes from 50,000 to 100,000 instead. She's still spending. She's in the entire race. She's still spending 1.8 million dollars less than her Senate opponent. keep that in your mind. She's still spending, even if we doubled what Annette is spending, she's still spending less than, it's $1.8 million less than what her opponent is spending.
It's
Because Vin
almost like
Gopal spent
it's almost like the
1.9.
Dems are just buying the votes.
Yes. I mean, it might be, we're not going to accuse anybody of anything, but it clearly seems if you're putting down that much money for a $49,000 a year job, there's something going on with that, Joe. I think we've talked about that in other districts.
That's right.
But
An assemblyman in the state of New Jersey makes under $50,000 a year. Yet
yes, and so does
the
the
Dems
Senate.
will spend millions to become a member of the assembly.
Why?
Must be a
I
very
mean,
strong sense of civic virtue.
Yeah, I don't think so because they're not getting, as you'll find out in one of our in future shows, they're not getting every single penny from little tiny donors who, grandma who's handing over her, her retirement savings to save the country. They're not getting it from there. They're getting it from big donor dollars. And in this case, we're going to mention the two Democrats. I would like to mentioned
Mhm.
the two Democrats were one was a lawyer and one was a union guy.
Mm. Oh,
And
surprise!
it
A
was
union running for office in New Jersey.
as a
Surprise!
as a
As
Democrat.
a Democrat.
Uh,
Oh
yeah,
wow!
and they both lost. They both lost to a fitness instructor Republican and a data analysis Republican. So or data gatherer, I think is what she was. But working in data.
Mhm.
So you're looking at really, they're not lawyers, but they're certainly not
What a
the
mandate!
political
What a mandate
class.
from the people with this level
Yeah.
of money and that level of prestige in a
Hmm.
state that culturally leans towards wealth, materialism, money, and prestige. They
Yeah.
chose the two working class ambiguous candidates who maybe a little, we were talking earlier, maybe a little bit of quirky in some ways. They chose those two candidates over the Democrats.
Well,
The
they're certainly
Democrats,
not standard. They're certainly not standard political quote unquote political class.
no.
That screams at me, which is, I think, a reflection of people. And I saw this in one of the races web pages today about how people are fed up with Republicans and Democrats, and they're independent. They were Republican for years,
Mhm.
but they think both parties are corrupt. And there's a reason why they think both parties are corrupt, and they think politicians are corrupt. I mean,
Oh.
maybe it has to do with the $1.9 million that's being spent to get a job that's only $49,000 a year.
Mhm.
Maybe that has something to do with us as a ordinary average citizen thinking that's crazy to be spending that money. And to be clear, this is not the most expensive or paid for district that we've run across. There's one that we're not going to tell you which one it is that they spent $5.5 million, the Democrats, just by the candidates. So that's a teaser for a
Yeah.
future show. And it's incredible the way that they were almost creamed in that
Mhm.
election.
Mhm.
Um, but these are real numbers. This is all
Mhm.
data that's taken from the public domain.
Mhm.
This is not insider stuff. This is just stuff that you can find on your own and confirm on your own by looking at the filings that these people have made and
Mhm.
the election results and Oprah requests like that we've been doing left and right here. So if we look at the Democrats in the Assembly, Joe, if we look at the Democrats and the Republicans, the between the two of them, the Democrats spent $800,000. Would you
Mhm.
say $800,000 between the two of them, and the Republicans spent about 110, 115. So between the two of them, they spent 115. Um,
Yeah,
I
eight
mean,
times.
this
Well,
is
yeah, $10 to $11 per vote versus under $2 per vote.
and Joe. I'm going to do this. If you notice,
Mhm.
they spent more than the Senate candidate. Look
Yeah,
at the numbers: 50,000, 62,000.
that
So I
must be one
think, and
incredible assembly job.
I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna put this out there, Joe.
Mhm.
Look at this is only $12,000 more, and this person, Pomperno, won 52,000, only $2,000 more, and Yulner one. I'm hoping I'm saying that name right. So it goes back to this number right here, Joe, where we said about $4,000. Then the Senate candidate could have won. I think, and here it is. I think these numbers support us in that statement. These numbers, the fact that these are still very low numbers, they're very low numbers, and they would have, if the Senate had and Annetta had the money, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 more, she would have beaten Gopal.
Based on this logical flow, this comparative logic, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, same amount of money, same area, it just makes perfect sense. One could make, now this is not taking into account the intangibles. This isn't taking into account the candidate, the personality, issues, media. We're not taking into account intangibles.
We can't do that right now.
We're just looking at numbers. In pure numbers, the money equals success, and the correlation or the proportion of money spent per vote it's obvious that the tipping point for the assembly was right at this number. It was right at the one. If you look at it, you basically had to beat $1.50 or over per vote. $1.50 or more per vote topped them over the Democrats. Anything under the senator was under $1.50 per vote, down. So right off the bat, analysis District 11, if you're not doing at least $1.50 per vote, you're not in the game. And this is against somebody who's doing $10 per vote, or in the case of the Senate, $51 per vote. Now,
exactly.
Yeah. But if you look at $51 per vote, that's 5 times as much as the assembly. 5 times as much. So maybe add what's $1.50 times 5, and then $7.50. It would take $7.50 per vote to do the Senate. If you think about, if you looked at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think though, I would say the danger with this is the old map. So this
now
is
we got to go to the
21.
new. Yeah, we got to go to the new one. Yeah.
Looking at the new map with the decrease in numbers.
Yeah, show the new map. And then now we got more of an issue because the new redistricting puts more Democrat-held areas in. Now, that's assuming they're going to keep voting Democrat. That's assuming, because we're seeing a big change in numbers of votes, and we're going to brief the increase in amount of voting that's been going on. That's assuming they're going to continue voting Democrat.
Right. So it's probably, let's pull this out like that, and here's the new map. And as you look at it,
this is the data for the new map. This is the data.
This is the data. I'm just going to pull down to the numbers on the bottom to get us.
We have a graph for the new map as well. When I mean the new map, we mean the redistricting. How the numbers look after LD11 was redistricted from 2019 to 2022.
Right. And so if you look at here, just as the numbers, you have, and we'll look at the numbers and I'll put the graph up, Joe, just so we get, or, let's do the graph first because, can you see that?
Yeah, this graph just is what it is. Just, it says it's very, I find this graph crystal clear, not because we built it, but assembly vote increase from 2019 to 2021.
Right. So switching gears a little bit, we're looking at the growth of the vote over the 19 election to the 21 election. You can see that these candidates in 21, they really upped their game.
Yeah.
They really upped their game, and they got the job done to bring home the votes.
More Republicans, substantially. I mean, 23,000 and change Democrats, 26,000 and change Republicans. So you're looking at a margin of roughly 6,700 more votes of Republican to Democrat. Looking at over a 10% margin here, easy. That's substantial in a political election.
Yeah, it works out. I mean, and it was a very close election, and we'll talk about that. I guess maybe we should probably talk about that now, Joe, before we move on to the.
Yeah, that's a good point.
To the. Let me pull that back then, because the election was so close, and what we determined was it was this one right here, right? It was. Let's pull that back. Um, as you're looking at the screen right now, you can see that for the assembly, you went. Oh, what happened there? There it is. Sorry about that, Joe. How's that? Can you see that, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
So for the assembly vote, the Democrats got 49.19%. The
Mm-hmm.
Republican got the Republicans got
49.99. Less than
49.99.
a percent. Less than a
Yeah.
percent.
And then if you look at the Green Party guy,
Yep.
he got 0.82,
So
and
yeah.
the difference between these two was really had a lot to do with the Green Party guy, the spoiler, which is a strategy, right, Joe? I mean, you want to mention the
It's called, yeah,
strategy.
it's a disruption. So in the word disrupt in the military parlance is to force compel the enemy to change its formation or order of movement. The disruption doesn't really have an effect. We're not talking about the effect, we're talking about the action. In this case, there is an 80% difference caused by a Green Party candidate. So that means 82%, 2% are going to vote Green Party no matter what. But the other, the 0.80%, that is, they came from somewhere. So we have to think, did they come from the Republican side, or did they come from the Democrat side, or did they come from the independent side, or people who normally don't vote? We don't know. We don't know. And we could assume they would come from the Democrat side because Green Party people tend to be Democrats. We assume. We don't know, but
And
we assume.
And we can also make the additional assumption because the Democrats were the ones who were the incumbents and
Mm-hmm.
they lost. So we
Mm-hmm.
can make that assumption as well,
Mm-hmm.
just based off of that. But that again is not taking into account the quality of the candidates. Maybe a lot of people were fed up with the situation, and the current incumbents, and they wanted new people. That could have been.
Yeah. It could be. It could be there, but there was a disruptor in this election, and that was the
There
Green Party
was.
candidate. And disruption, it's got a popular term now. Nowadays, it seems. I mean, not just I'm in my advanced age. I went back to grad school and got my second degree in MBA, and in my early 40s, and they talked about disruption like they said it with like reverent tones whenever they talk about disruptor, like it was the greatest thing in the world. Sometimes it isn't. I mean, if you disrupt something to the point where you cause the better candidate to lose or you change the will of the people, is that really a better thing to happen? It's not always the better thing to happen when this occurs. So, but there's definitely a disruptor in this race with the assembly.
Right. And just to give you practical numbers, I will pull this up
Mhm.
and over
Tight
a
race
little
like
bit.
this,
This is
0.8082% made a big difference.
Yeah, the number of difference between the total
Mhm.
Democrats and total Republicans. Again, it's not necessarily easy because there's the votes for assembly count for two.
Mhm.
So we combine them just to kind of give us a general number. The difference between them was 1,128 votes.
Mhm.
And if you look at the Green Party total, it was 1,152.
Mhm.
So I mean, it speaks for itself.
Mhm.
In many ways, this is clearly the disruptor had some kind of impact in such a close race. Now, the good side of this is the two Republican assemblywomen are in a position to hold these seats just by their personality, just by their position. We've
Mhm.
talked about this, Joe, in other races where if you hold the office, you can use that office to promote yourself, to get the
Oh yeah,
numbers out,
tremendous
to
advantage to the
to
incumbent. Yeah.
to get people elected in your district to
Mhm.
help you, like assembly people, or I'm sorry, local mayors or local councilmen and women, to help get out your vote when it comes to election time, and or even that goes all the way down to board of education members. If you can get the more people you can get elected in your district, the more support you're going to have overall, because you're going to have more voices out there
Mhm.
speaking for you,
Mhm.
and
It
that's
would,
always a plus.
but the in the what sticks in my mind, what sticks out in front of me as hearing you say that is when we have a Republican incumbent in a district. At
Hmm.
that point, should not that be a driver or a forcing function for state GOP support?
You would hope so. You would hope
think,
so.
yeah, you'd
Yeah,
think.
that would be a wise strategic move,
Mhm.
Sensei.
And even if in the petulancy, is that a word? Petulancy? I want to say
Uh,
petulant.
petulant. Go ahead, go for it.
He's very petulant. I'm going to invent it if it's not the petulancy of the mentality that says, "Well, I don't like this Republican candidate, so I'm going to let them fail." It's very
Right,
stupid because have the Republican in there, and if that Republican chooses or approves to be ineffective, then grow a better Republican candidate under their umbrella.
right.
And then when that better Republican
Then
candidate
upgrade.
becomes, yeah,
Then you can upgrade.
mhm, mhm.
Right?
You're
Isn't that what
like
you're gonna say? Then
you're a general and you're going to relieve one of your commanders,
yeah.
right? And
Yep.
but your sergeant major comes into you and he says, "Sir, we have no one in that brigade or that battalion who can step up and lead. You take him
Right.
out, you're going to make a mess. Yeah, we don't like him. He's screwed up, but he's commanding that battalion. You move him, who's going to step up? The XO ain't ready. The S3 isn't ready. None of the company commanders can lead the battalion. They're too young. Who's going to take that battalion? And that's the
Exactly.
mentality. We got to approach this from a military mentality. We know what we got to do. We got to do a separate video on what we provided in the last one, where we showed the New Jersey GOP and the Democrats of New Jersey and their finances. Because people viewing this are not going to see that context when you see how
Right.
little the money the New Jersey GOP has compared to the Democrats and what they spend it on. I mean, we go to town on that one. We got to do a separate video on both parties statewide, what they have and what they spend it on, and then it'll be very revealing.
I agree. I think that'll give us a really good, because we need to do that because that is a key moment. So I know there's going to be a lot of talk about money and how you get it. That's a separate conversation, right?
Mhm.
That's a separate conversation. How do you get that money? But
But it's a
but
given. Yeah, that's their job. That's their job.
right,
Like
right,
General Miller used to say, we're a results oriented business. Is the flag on Mount Suribachi or is the flag not on Mount Suribachi?
right,
And you're a state political party. Your job is to get candidates elected, and your job is to support them. And if you're not doing it,
right.
the why doesn't matter. The why is for you to figure out. Not you, Jim, but you, the
Yeah,
NJ,
no,
the
I know
political
what you meant.
party.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. The why is for the political party to figure out. The what that is irrefutable. The what has to be done is irrefutable. The
hmm
why and the how, that's their job to figure out.
Real briefly, Joe. Here is the Senate numbers. We did the Assembly on the
Mhm.
other side. This is the Senate numbers. You can see the difference is 3.76 between the Republican Annetta and Gopal, who is the Democrat. You can see still very close. Again, reinforcing that idea. It's less than 4% that they need it in order to carry the
Mhm.
seat. And the spoiler in the Senate race could help with that.
Yeah.
Now, now, if it's all right with you, we'll move to the 2023 map. We can take a look at that. Um, this is the 2023 map right here, what you see in front of you. So these towns, again, Bradley Beach is at it, which is this one down at the bottom, and the one that is leaving is the West Long Branch borough. Now, to make an understanding of these numbers, where we got these numbers here from Bradley Beach are from the 2021 election. So again, this is we're not looking at the candidates moment. We're not looking at who came from the I think it's the 10th district they came out of, or maybe the 10th district that they came out of. We're not looking at those candidates. We're looking at just Republican, Democrat candidates and the numbers.
We're transposing the numbers from the 2019 election to the 2021 district map, only adding in or subtracting what was gained or lost by the redistricting.
Right. And so doing that, we see a significant 2,000 plus almost 3,000 votes for the state senator. And then for the Republican, doing the numbers,
Mhm.
35,943 is the highest of these four.
Mhm.
The second highest of these is 35,909, which is that means we're in retrograde. I think isn't that the term to use, Joe? We're losing seats now. We're in falling back. So this district, while they did a great hustle job in 21, this is going to require more hustling because
Mhm.
they're losing a seat if things stay as they are
And one
without.
would think it's intuitive based on the information we've pulled that if
Mhm.
the state GOP, if the state New Jersey Republican Party, the GOP, Grand Old Party means Republican Party for those who don't know, if the state Republican Party wants to win this district, which I think they should, then they should see the correlation between money spent and then they should up it for this assembly race because this
Right.
assembly, these candidates are proven winners and they have a lot of competition. But it also we have to also determine if I was these candidates, this is what I'd be looking at. Whoever voted for me, I'm going to retain their vote by keeping my campaign promises. I'm going to assume that does it. And then we have to now start zeroing in on who didn't vote but is registered Republican. How many? And
Right.
then the big question in this district is how many registered Republicans did not vote? And then if I get them out to vote, if I just get half of them out to vote, will that then put me over the edge with what the Democrats can do?
Yeah, and don't hate me, Fairhaven, because I forgot the city of or the town of Fairhaven borough is also added in this round to the 2023 map. So I
Mhm.
apologize. It's just not Bradley Beach. It's also Fairhaven borough that's
And,
on it, and
but it's not a bad
higher
news
up.
story entirely because we see in New Jersey, most of the people who vote are independent, and then also we are unaffiliated. And then we see people switching. I mean, Sparta, New Jersey is an incredible thing. They vote for a Republican conservative school board, but then put Democrats on the council over one issue. So that we have a fickle voting habit. We're noticing that is kind of
That's New
statewide.
Jersey.
Yeah, it's a very
That's that's
fickle
a
vote.
that's a New Jersey trait, man.
So
That's
that
a New
puts it
Jersey
really
trait.
up in play for the Republican side to tip this balance.
Well, Joe, if it's all right, I'd like to talk about a major issue that should be discussed in
Yeah,
this upcoming election.
yeah.
And as you'll, if you, I mean, you want to switch from numbers? Are you good with the numbers we've talked about, or
Yeah, I
do
think we're
you?
clear in the point we made on this. Absolutely.
Okay, so looking at, and I want to zero in on one town in particular, which is Asbury Park. And Asbury Park, as you will see from the numbers over here, Asbury Park is a Democrat stronghold. It
Mhm.
is 4,900, 4,800. I mean, it's 10. It's 5 to 1. For every one Republican, there's 5 Democrats. That's the best way to look at it. Asbury Park has one of the worst school districts in the state of New Jersey, and a topic that's going to have to be discussed by every assemblyman, every assemblywoman out there is the idea of schools, not just what's being taught, but also the focus of education in general. What is the purpose of education? And we don't even talk about ideology. You don't have to say that you're. I mean, you can, of course. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't. You should be putting out your opinions, and you should be letting people know where you stand. I think that's the best way to communicate who you are. And I think common sense stuff rings well. So if you're doing common sense, talking common sense, then you're gonna ring well with this. But I just want to point out, just let's look at the numbers on education. So to do that, I did a little bit of digging, Joe. So what we have here in front of us, the numbers that we're looking at uh, on this screen is Asbury Park Public School.
Yeah.
These
Let, let
are
me let
the
me let me just interject one thing for the audience. What we're about to do is we're
right.
about to compare the public schools and the charter schools, show marked differences in performance, and then correlate it to the Democrats' platform of spending lots of money on public schools. And then the issue is, as taxpayers and voters, why are we throwing all this money out for bad education? And what can be done about it? Because where the Democrats are strong, their schools suck, and they're the biggest proponents of public education, but it's collectively getting worse. And Jim's about to show you the proof.
Right. And in the best example is in the last election when Murphy was going on about wanting to help brown and black children. The reality is he wasn't, and he's hasn't been doing it for a long time.
Yeah,
So I'm just going to talk very briefly about what's been going on in Asbury Park, which is really a case example. It's not the exception; it really is the rule,
yeah.
and we got to keep that in mind because if you look at the numbers on the screen in front of you, this section of New Jersey has a 17.1 proficiency rate, and this goes back to 19, and I know that, but I want to keep in tune that these numbers you're seeing are worse today. Collectively, the state of New Jersey and the entire country that locked down, their numbers went down. So this is actually a high number compared to what it is today. Keep that in mind. So 17.1 is a high of proficiency for English language proficiency for Asbury Park. So that's an 82%, 83% that is not proficient in the school.
For the audience to know, Jim is a school teacher. This is what he does for a living. He teaches school. So he isn't just somebody who did the information and is assessing it. This is his life.
Right. And then as we look over at math, there's no numbers. And as you scroll in and you want to say, why are there no numbers? There's no point there. There's nothing on the XY graph. Down here are the numbers. And you'll note under math, they have this little asterisk. And if you look up here at the asterisk, data is not displayed in order to protect student privacy, which
that tells me it
translates
must
to
really suck if they don't want to display it.
well, it's such a low number that I can sit there and say, oh, it's this student over there, or it's the student from this school, because that student stands out. And so they're protecting that because the number's so low. They can then identify which students they are because their numbers are so low. You know, it's just like anything else. You can pick out in a crowd who's different, and you can pick out the crowd on who's doing well in the school. Right. So they can't put that up there because they're going to tell you who it is. Now, again, I'm just a little aside. This is a little bit of history here. Murphy's commissioner of education, whose name I can't remember, Lapella, I think it was.
For those outside of New Jersey, he's talking about Governor Murphy. When he says Murphy, he's talking about the
Governor Murphy.
Governor.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for keeping me honest here. I appreciate that.
No. I'm just for the sake of the audience, just communications.
Yeah, see, when you get wrapped up in this stuff, it's easy to just lose the thought and just think, everyone should know what I'm talking about.
Governor Murphy is a spokesman for Goldman Sachs, whose hobby is being the governor of New Jersey.
Well put. So anyway, he hires a commissioner of education who used to be the superintendent of this district. Now, I think this district spends like $40,000 per student. It's a high.
Well, Murphy's from Monmouth County. Governor Murphy lives in Monmouth County.
And so they spend that much money and they're getting this low proficiency rate. Yeah. Let's step back for a second. The superintendent of this district became his commissioner of education.
Yeah.
And since this man was the superintendent, these scores have not gotten better. The school itself has been in a lot of turmoil. The teachers are feeling unsafe. I think they fired, kind of some of the drama is that they fired one of the principals or he quit because there was a gang situation. And there's a lot of turmoil going on in this. But to point out one of the policies or two of the policies that the commissioner of education had when he was the superintendent of this district was something he called the 64 floor, which is everyone has a 64 percentage grade. It doesn't matter where you are. You don't start at 0, you start at 64, which if you have a 65 passing, you turn in one assignment and you're passing, right?
So he basically padded the book so he didn't have to answer for results.
Right. And then to make it even, the additional padding was instead of taking attendance when school starts, he would take attendance after lunch, because then they would guarantee that they would have students there who came in because they couldn't get the food. Now, this is a problem of the entire town. This isn't a problem of just district. So the kind of point here is, yes, you can hammer this data there. It's there.
So this guy is the equivalent of during the Chechen War, Russian officers would invent fake combat scenarios by shooting at nothing and pretend they were in combat to get combat pay. Because in the Russian army, you had to actually prove you were in combat to get combat pay. So this is that equivalent. In Afghanistan, the commanders have what they call ghost soldiers. So they say they have this big formation, They don't. Most of those guys have deserted long ago, but they keep reporting them as there so they can keep getting paid for these guys, which they pocket the money. So in the United States of America, in our school districts, we have a district. What was he? The superintendent.
He was a superintendent. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is behaving like a Russian officer in Chechnya or a Afghan Kandak commander in Kandahar, basically padding the books for his own benefit.
Well, and now I think he's the president of Kane University. I
Of
think
course,
he's moved on
you got to
since
give him a university. Absolutely.
he
A
went from
university
being the
named for a
commissioner.
great Republican, by the way, for a famous Republican.
Yeah, so he went from being Asbury Park's superintendent
Mhm.
to becoming commissioner of education for New Jersey, and then he went, and I think it's Kane. It could be a different university. It could be TCNJ. I'm not sure. I don't remember off the top of my head, so I apologize. But he did advance, and so the idea of having all those students, he's really let this district down. But again, this is not just a school district issue, but I mean it is, but it's not just that. It's also a Asbury Park issue, because I just want to remind you before I go into the charter school, 30 minutes away is the Freehold Borough Freehold Regional School District, which has 6 high schools, 11,000 kids in it, and it was within easy driving distance for a bus to get from point A to point B. And these kids could be going there if they had vouchers or if they had the ability to go to a choice school. They could be going there, or one of the other districts in the area that are, I haven't done a deep dive on them, but I'm assuming that they're better than Asbury Park. I mean, Asbury Park is pretty low in the reaches for it, but they could have the choice of that, which school choice is not a Democrat model. If you go look at Murphy, his voting rights on charter schools have been very, very low. School choice, very, very low. He just recently switched because he's planning on running for president, and he's trying to make it sound like he is for school choice and is for these people. But to that point, Joe, and here's the direct competition of Asbury Park Public School, and that would be, let me pull it up, New Hope Charter School in Asbury Park.
Oh,
So
wow. What a difference. So
New
we
Hope
have
Charter
one where
School,
the math scores, we don't even mention them because we don't want to harm the identity of
right?
the student when we know that they suck. One where the ELA proficiency rate is in the trash. This is a public school run by Democrats. And of course, the New Jersey Teachers Union, I'm sure, is very, very concerned over these standards. And
Well,
then
I mean,
now we look at a charter school and look at the difference. We've basically doubled and tripled, respectively, the measures of performance.
right, and so it's like, to be clear, charter schools are public schools in the state of New Jersey. They're accountable to the Department of Education, just like traditional public schools. They also only get 90% of the money that is spent in the sending district. So in this case, they're getting 90% of $40,000. Or I think it's actually down now to 34,000, but you still get the point. They're doing the same, a better job, a 3 or 4, as Joe pointed out, 3 or 4 times better job with 90%, 10% less of what the traditional public school is doing. And they have only 225 kids in their school, or 255, I forget the number again, but it's close to that. It's a low number, but they can't expand, Joe. They're not allowed to expand because you got to get state permission to expand. And there's been a moratorium on on charter schools from expanding or even opening in many cases. So they can't even open up another charter school. They can't even expand, and to make it more people to be able to have better education. And to be clear, the numbers you see is with 11% of disabilities, IEP kids within the district. So this is not a cherry pick group of students. This is not, there's no test to get in. If you live in Asbury Park, you get on a lottery, and the lottery is pulled from a random number, just like they do the lottery, and there's no rigging. It's meant to be very simple, very straightforward. So whoever gets picked first, you get to go. That's the way it works in charter schools. And like I said, the system is rigged in Asbury Park against the students. Period. End of sentence. Full stop. There is nothing other to say that. It is rigged against the students. And an assemblywoman who goes up in there and starts talking to the people in this district, in this particular part of the district, is
Yeah,
willing
the
to do that.
Republicans should be all over this. The
You can
Republicans should be
steal
all
votes.
over this because
This
there are
is
many. Yeah, this is an obvious. There's first of all, the only parents that would want to see the Democrats continue with these students are the very far left woke parents who really don't care about their kids' education to begin with. They see school as a socialization. They see school as a place to dump. They see the schools as a glorified daycare. But
right.
pretty much any parent who cares about the success and health of their children are going to vote, obviously, to get better leadership in this regard. And for the audience, in New Jersey, this state is dominated by the teachers union. I've only seen one incident where a fired teacher actually got pushed out, and that's because that fired teacher was so criminal. It was disgusting, and that was another story that was here in Sparta. But the New Jersey Teachers Union controls everything. So you think you're electing a conservative school board, and then the New Jersey Teachers Union instigates frivolous ethics complaints. It brings mobs and gangs of people to scream at the school board during meetings. It doxes them. It sends their social media trolls against them. It sends their character assassins against them. It gets lawyers to make frivolous lawsuits. The New Jersey Teachers Union is a monster, and the school boards isn't the answer. Many Democrats will come and they'll vote for a Republican school board, but then they'll vote for Democrat leadership. It's not going to change. The school board is just a Band-Aid on the wound. You need to replace the political architecture that enables this union to totally crush and stifle all good that happens. And this teachers union, in my view, isn't about the kids. It's about the jobs and the teachers and then the donations and then the government subsidies. This is like any other union. It's a racket.
I would say, Joe, in the case of Asbury Park, the information that we just laid out, that information, if you look at Asbury Park on the screen, I'll try and blow it up a little bit, but I can't blow it up because it'll ruin the image. But there's 4,800 votes that the Democrats have, 950 for Republicans. In the actual voting, the Democrats got 2,400 votes. Republicans came up with 566. Now I want to put this because this is part of the strategy. We're going to look back at the strategy. Every single vote of a Democrat that you can take in Asbury Park with the issues that we just laid out doesn't count as one vote. It really counts as two, because you're stealing a Democrat vote and you're adding it to the Republican vote. So it's really doubling your chances. And so when we look at cost analysis as a money-wise type of thing, it might be more profitable for you to use your time in the district working in these areas and helping out these families to get results.
Yes,
Helping them
and a
to
typical mantra, and I'm saying this as a conservative Republican, we fail at that. Our whole
yeah,
message is the Dems are bad. That's our whole message.
yeah.
Reagan was so successful because Reagan came with an incredible message. Bush too, during his second election, had a pretty incredible message too. Some people didn't like it, but a lot of people did. That's why he beat Kerry. So if we don't have a message, and in New Jersey, we got some great messages: union corruption, failing schools, taxes that are out of control. We got some great messages. Why aren't we
Yeah.
capitalizing on it? Why aren't we
No,
capitalizing on it?
well, and I think it's also actions too, right?
Mhm.
Because if you really look at this, this isn't a 2023 issue. This is an issue that's been decades and decades in the making. So Democrats have controlled, again, the Assembly and the Senate for 20 years. But the idea of Asbury Park being a failing school district is not something that came up in the last 5 years. It's not even during Murphy's time. It's been a failing district for decades because it's on the Abbott list. And so which is a list
Explain what
of
the
districts
Abbott
that are
list is.
failing.
The Abbott list.
The Abbott list is the districts which were taken over. They were so low performing that they were taken over by the state. And that, as you saw, the numbers are there. Newark is an Abbott district. Uh, Trenton's an Abbott district. These are districts that are failing, and they have continued to fail decade after decade after decade. That's why across the map of New Jersey, this is a winning topic to talk about. Using Asbury Park as just one example, because there's many out there.
A microcosm.
Probably
It's a microcosm of all the Abbott districts in the state.
and
The follow-on election that can easily use this to excel and to win.
And I'm going to throw this out there too, because there's New Jersey is ranked the number one in the country as far as schools are concerned. But you just saw the numbers for Asbury Park. Do you agree that New Jersey is number one as considered when you look at that? And really, who are the most affected? Because
it's number one. Who's doing the ranking?
The numbers are legit. Here's why. Okay. Here's why the numbers seem so skewed. Because it's an average. You take numbers like you just saw, and you do an average because it's a federal number. You do an average across of all the 600 different districts in the state, and what you see is you got districts like Wyckoff and I think Chatham, who
super
are
high performing
80 some or 85% high performing districts, and then you have these districts, and the number is so high because of so many high performing districts. And you know the way averages work, it's an average. It doesn't show the whole thing. It doesn't show the whole picture. It shows the average picture. So
the high performing districts are carrying the state in terms of the
in being number one. But in actuality, there's so many kids in the state that are being left behind, whatever you want to call it, who are being disserved, who are being punished just because of the way where they live. And it's not about I'm not going to throw, it's not about race. It's not about any of that. If you just look at the numbers, it's simply because the people in charge of those parts of the state and overall are the ones who are making the bad decisions. It's like the old man used to say, you poop on me once, your fault. You poop on me twice, my fault. Well, let me tell you, they've been pooping for 20 years on us.
But here's what the numbers are showing. The people that run the district are part of a political party that spends 50 times as much in some cases as the other party. So we got a bread and circuses situation of buying votes through propaganda and expenditures and all kinds. We're going to go through some really good math later in another episode, which is going to demonstrate what they spend money on. But we have one that's overwhelming an area with money to buy votes just to superficially get in charge and then run the educational system into the ground.
Here's a comment. This is
very late Roman Empire, isn't it?
This is not my comment. It's Charles Barkley's comment. I will say this, and this is about race. What he said is clearly about race. He walks on his many places that he goes around the country, promoting his books or promoting himself or just promoting people being better people, right? So he goes into a school, a mostly majority white district, and he asks kids, "What do you want to do for your future? What's your future?" He gets lawyers, he gets doctors. He gets his responses are teachers. All these like white collar, I guess, jobs. What it would be. He goes into a black district. It's mostly black students or mostly brown students. And what do you want to be? And he gets, I want to be an athlete, whatever the athlete may be, NBA, whatever, majority NBA. And he would sit there and say, well, what's your backup plan? Because there's only 400 athletes in the NBA. That's it. And all those spots are taken. How you can't be, there's just too small a number, and there's no backup plan. And so somewhere in that dialogue and what I just relayed, what Barkley said, is the answer to what needs to be done to fix the schools. And I don't believe it has to do with you need to have more black teachers or less white teachers. what you need to do is you need to have a change in attitude in the schools. And that doesn't happen easily. And it certainly doesn't happen when you have a group of people who don't want it to happen. And I
Mhm.
truly believe that, as Joe just pointed out, bread and circus, what he's talking about is very simple.
Well,
You
a
keep the
failing
people
school brings
dumb.
in the funds.
Yeah,
A failing
you keep
school
the
brings in
school,
the funds. The school's failing so they can get more money from the government.
and the district, in the district itself, if you keep the people who are trying to, being taught there, if you
Mhm.
keep them uneducated and unable to read and unable to do the math,
Yeah.
then it's easier
It's
to
a
control
Democrat
them.
voter.
It's easier to control them. And that is, I believe, part of the message that needs to be done
Is keeping
across.
a dependency class that is going to keep
Mhm.
voting on who feeds them bread and circuses.
Yeah,
And
and that's,
it's all working out. It's under the guise of free public education that's beneficial, but public education's great. Public education made me and my family, almost all of us. Public education in America was a
yeah.
great, great thing, but that was good public education. Well, actually, I don't have good public education. I had New
Well,
York City
what's the
public schools in
target?
the 80s, but the point is,
What's being
though,
taught?
bad public
What's being taught?
education is crap. Bad public education is actually, I would argue, almost detrimental to a community and to people going there.
Yeah,
There's
and
so much potential that slips through the cracks because of a bad educational system.
Joe, we're at an hour, but I would just throw this in there. What could be done? Well, you can start hammering the education department to try to get them to change their silly rules where they're doing more, where in the younger grades, because every single bit of data that you want to pull up
Mhm.
shows it starts the younger you start in changing these trends of bad education. The younger you start, the more likely it's going to change later on. But there's the outside effect of what's going on in the district. Inside itself, there's I think in Perth Amboy, some kids, there was bullying in younger grades. They stabbed each other. There was a stabbing in it. There's things like that that need to be dealt with, which are outside the school district, and that's also something an assemblywoman or assemblyman can have some influence on. This is where you start to make the change. You start standing up for these kids, and you start standing up to the power brokers who are trying to keep things the way they are, because the way they are is broken. Period. And that's really the
Mhm.
best strategy. I mean, you can go into the diversity and the gender and the gender bending that they're doing. You can certainly do that
Well,
because,
all those are
hey,
distractions. All those are distractions from the
but
reality in that
but there
their system is failing.
yes and no, because one of the things that you need to keep in mind is they're doing all this gender bending at a very young age, but they're doing that instead of doing your times tables, doing your reading,
Yeah.
they're doing that. There's only a finite amount of time you have with a kid during the day, and if you spent when we were kids, you spent X number of hours, 10 hours or in a week on reading, and 10 hours on math, and 10 hours on science. Well, guess what? If you're taking away and you're doing now 10 hours on gender bending, well, where's that? What's going to suffer? One of those has to suffer. We're not extending the day. The union won't let us extend the day, right? So you got to take away from something else.
That
And
that's
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 the
the intent.
lessons.
That's the intent. That is exactly the intent, is to distract
Mission
from the hard
accomplished.
job, which is to educate and prepare kids for the future and enrich their lives through education, and focus on this nonsense that only lunatics and very sick people buy into.
Mhm.
So here we have it. We have a district where we see two assembly candidates who were unlikely candidates, where not lawyers or union people like almost all politicians in New Jersey are,
Yep.
who win by the skin of their teeth in an election where they're outspent $12 to 1. And then we have a Senate race where it was still very close, but the Republican lost because he was outspent $50 to every one. We have a
Mhm.
redistricting going on that is going to slightly favor the Democrats, and the opportunity for the Republicans to reverse that And to reverse that momentum is to latch on to the fact that they have some ridiculously failing schools compared to charter schools. So public education is run by the Democrats, run by the New Jersey Educational Association, and they're doing a horrible job. The candidates should be highlighting that. And we're not here to do strategy. That's something separate. But in the analysis, that is a very big cause in this district. And then the money the Dems are spending is extreme. And it would be very interesting with how many voters are there in this? 140,000? How many total voters?
140, the overall number of registered voters in the district, which is up from 2019, is 160,000.
160,000
registered voters.
And the GOP is only a few dollars per vote away from getting this district. Right. We're seeing a pattern here. We're seeing a pattern.
And they're also only a few dollars from losing the district too. I mean, from winning the entire district or losing the entire district. So, I mean, when you're looking at the power, power of the purse, when the Vin Goebel can spend $1.9 million in his primary and his general, when he doesn't have anybody in his primary race to run against, but he's spending money in there, like that's crazy. But
it is
still spending a lot of money.
Crazy. There's a method to the madness, though. Why would you spend money in a primary when nobody's challenging you? Well, you're buying
to get your name out there.
Well, and you're buying the votes. You're basically buying the votes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he spent $850,000 in his primary, and he spent $1.60,000
And what the Republicans spend again?
Between the two of them, she spent $50,000.
Yeah.
I mean, these numbers are telling, folks, and so I hope you take this. Those of you in the 11th district, I encourage you to support your candidates. I encourage you to get out there and get your friends to support these candidates, and get out there and really change the map. This is an opportunity for us to not only hold on to these two seats, but get rid of the Democrat in the Senate from this district and make it a full red district, a full conservative district.
And then there'll be a ripple down effect. Then you'll get Republican townships. Then you'll get Republican school boards, and you'll get a Republican. I think they already have a Republican county commission. But we're going to send this to Monmouth Republican Party. We're gonna target this video out in that area. I'm going to try to boost it out there and see what the Monmouth Republicans think of this.
All right. Any final thoughts, Joe?
No, Jim, great work. Thank you as always. And I love how you brought the education factor and you picked up on that. You picked up on a particular school district that was a disaster in this legislative district.
I think that might be something we should probably separate out and put into the entire, just put out there with all our rest of our stuff, just so we can have it out there for
everyone. Yeah, we should do an analysis on the New Jersey educational system.
Yeah.
We should do an analysis on that.
Having said that,
right? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Money spent. Well, number one, after we do the legislative districts, we were thinking about going to the counties. But perhaps another one is the school districts. Here are the school districts.
The PACs.
Yeah. How many school districts are in New Jersey? I don't even know.
600 and
that's a lot.
I think the number 600 and change.
We can't do that. Yeah. We got to figure out a way to bite it into bigger chunks.
Maybe it's 560 districts, and I think there's 600 in some towns.
Well, let's start with budgeting, and then we'll take the top performers and the lowest performers. The top 10 highest performers in New Jersey, the top 10 lowest performing school districts in New Jersey. Look at the money that's being sent. Look at the resources the NGA and the districts are putting into it, and then try to figure out why. Let's look at the demographics of the district and try to figure out why one are succeeding and one are. And if it turns out to be the demographics are heavy one race or the other, in one group's getting underserved. Let's look at the real why instead of just saying, these people were treated bad for 100 years or 200, 500 years.
Right.
Or these people are recent immigrants, or this particular area had this happen. Let's look at the actual tangible reasons that it is happening. And if you got people who excel in those schools and go on to great stuff without any help, what was the secret to their success?
I think also part of it is, a lot of Republicans talk about the funding formula. They talk about a funding formula for the schools, which I have to tell you flies over most people's heads. You're not. They don't. They don't. They don't put two and two together. You need to talk about the numbers of the failing schools and how whatever money they spend, because they're spending $40,000, whatever money they're spending, they're still failing the schools. So it's not a money issue. It's not a money issue. It's a different issue than money. And that's what really needs to be addressed. So, a
It's
lot
like
of the
bombing the
Republicans
Ho
talk
Chi
about
Minh Trail. It's like bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail, dropping these large
it's
bombs on these little trails in the jungle that absolutely nothing to stop the NVA from getting into South Vietnam.
and I think what we're doing is we're Republicans, that they think that's a winning issue to talk about, and it may be for places like Wyckoff and other.
Well,
Mountain Lakes.
the results tell the story. I
Yeah,
mean, there's 1,000 reasons for failure, but not one single excuse. The results are, if you have a district that's sucking, something's
yeah,
going wrong, and we
yeah.
got to find some answers for it. But yep, we had District 11, everybody, New Jersey
Yeah.
Legislative District 11.
Tell your friends about this. Share this on your social media or wherever
Mm-hmm.
you may be.
Yep,
Also,
we're making it
like it
public.
and also write a comment. Tell us what you think. If you didn't like something, if there was a problem with it, we like comments. We like feedback. Um, and as I always say, if you're a Democrat and you dislike it, make sure you click the like button 3 times to show just how much you dislike it. And if you're a Republican and you like it, just once. Uh, so, having said that, ladies and gentlemen, have a great night. We'll talk to you later.
Have a great
See
night.
you when we do the next
And the
one.
glory.